Welcome everybody to Helicopter Pilot Study Group number 22. The Helicopter Pilot Study Group, the purpose of this platform is for pilots of all skill levels, from students to experienced pilots with thousands of hours everywhere in between, CFIs, commercial pilots, private pilots, and the idea here is to take the opportunity to meet with a group of our peers, practice our lesson plans if we're working towards CFI, put together a plan or a topic that we want to discuss or address or teach on from the ACS, a task, and then we collectively talk about it as a group. Generally, we can squeeze in one presentation or two, depending on how the topic goes. You guys are all encouraged to take the opportunity to work on your lessons plans and present them here. It's a great platform for it. And it really will help develop your presentation skills. I've been doing this at a flight school, at a fixed-wing flight school for a couple, I want to say it's almost 8 months, 10 months now, periodically. And it's been great presenting with fixed-wing guys. It's really helped my skills, but then I recognize the need for a study group just like this for helicopter pilots, and it's really evolved into a great community of experience levels and contributions from all experience levels. And so something we want to continue to encourage. It's growing, which is great. I'm so glad we have some new names here today. Thanks to everyone who's helping promote it and get it going. And I'd encourage you all, if you have the opportunity or if you feel like you want to talk about a subject or a topic, do it. I think you'll find it rewarding and really a positive learning experience and growth experience for you too. So I'm going to start this presentation. I'm giving a lesson plan essentially on auto rotations. The idea is I've been working on the FOI, and I gave a presentation last week, fumbled my way, not last week, the week before, but I fumbled my way through a lesson plan about the FOI on the elements of effective teaching, focusing on primarily scenario first kind of SBT training. I'm not going to go back over this. I'm just going to give you the kind of the prelude to the auto rotation discussion. And so in this lesson plan that I talked about last week or the week before, I ran a scenario, right? Alex, a private pilot, is pursuing a helicopter add-on certification. He arrives for his first lesson, and during the lesson, after an entry at 1,000 feet, Alex froze on the controls at the 200-foot check. His hands were rigid. There was no response to verbal cues. CFI takes the controls, recovers power, flies safely back to pattern altitude. Now on the ground, you face an important teaching moment in Alex's training. So I went through the FOI, kind of pulled out some elements that I felt were relevant to why Alex froze. Kind of learned through some of the effective communication, focused on on this scenario-based training, instructional communication, role-playing, some of the things that I found that could have been done better from the CFI's perspective to kind of help this scenario. Additionally, what happens when a scenario like this were to play out? How do you react as a CFI, right? Do you kind of snap and say, hey, why'd you freeze? Or, just kind of working through that positive versus negative motivation, focusing on positive learning environment. I really like the debrief and the 4R debrief idea. Replay it, reconstruct it, reflect it, redirect it, and put a lot of the put a lot of ownership back into the students' kind of a mentality to help prepare them for building from that experience and becoming more proficient. And then just kind of a recap. One of the things that I liked was the amygdala hijack. So when you criticize somebody, the brain can't really learn what is from being threatened, right? So you get that amygdala hijack where they switch from a higher order cognitive processing to survival mode. And we talked about this in the fixed wing study group. Some examples of this. But as a CFI, really trying to kind of avoid those scenarios or that type of reaction as a CFI. So the purpose of this presentation today is to create a lesson plan for an auto rotation experience, kind of the student's first auto rotation, right? So what is it? How would I approach talking to a student after they have had some flying time and it's time to start experiencing autos? What is the approach I would take as a CFI to help mitigate some of those experiences that I talked about in the scenario from the FOI? So I'm going to pop my screen back open here and we will share this screen again. All right, so my experience from learning auto rotations was, I found it to be inefficient or ineffective and really very basic. My CFI, who I think is outstanding, but in the moment, the experience from the ground portion was there's a lot left to be desired. And essentially, the CFI went to the board, drew basically what you're seeing on screen here. Right, we have a helicopter. We're flying straight and level, 65, 70 knots, whatever it is. We're going to lower collective, or we're going to close throttle, lower collective, bump up, aft cyclic, right pedal, and we're going to glide. Once we glide, we're going to make sure we have enough airspeed, keep our RPMs in the green. Then we're going to start the baby flare. We're going to start flaring around treetop level. We're going to continue the flare. We're going to level the ship, roll on throttle, and set it down, right? So it was really just a quick discussion with a drawing on a whiteboard. I was probably 35 hours in at this point. I did not really have very advanced training, unfortunately, early on. So it took me a while, and I wasn't really prepared for the auto rotation discussion. I hadn't done any I didn't really pre-treat myself and get a bunch of information there. I was so overwhelmed with all the other things that I was learning that I didn't really prep for it, and I didn't really get great instruction on it. Not to say that the experience was bad, it was just fast. We went to 500 feet AGL, we entered, we dropped it like 1,500 feet a minute, we flared, we leveled the ship, and it went through in a flash. I was like, holy shit, right? So the whole experience was not very educational. It was more thrilling and exciting. And from that moment on, I actually wanted to really start to learn and understand autos. So I guess in that sense, it was positive. But I wish that I had better instruction. And that's not the CFI's fault by any means. I think it's partly my own for not really kind of understanding the process. I had gone through Hogs school and I learned through Hogs, but it wasn't sufficient really. I needed some more hands-on education. So this experience is simulating a student whose competency level's around 10 to 20 hours. They understand throttle control. They understand all of the controls of the helicopter. They understand what the collective does and the cyclic and how to control yaw. We have done governor off training, pickups, set downs, rolling, using the correlator, getting basic understanding of how to manipulate the throttle. I think is an important skill to learn sooner than later. We've started quick stops. The student knows how to start a quick stop. Might be ballooning a lot still, which I think we're all a little bit guilty of, but definitely not sinking, right? So decent at quick stops, understands the concept, can keep the helicopter relatively in trim. Understands the concept of induced drag. I think that's important. So understanding that, has gone through enough school to understand that when we pull pitch, we're inducing a lot of drag in the rotor blades, and it requires more power to push that rotor blade through the air. When we lower collective, it reduces pitch, right? So they understand that kind of that relationship between pitch and collective. And so it's to the point now where I think it's time to take the student up and practice what auto rotations might look like, right? So here would be my talking to you like I'm talking to this student. at the 10 to 20 hour mark about their first experience with auto rotation. So here we go. All right, we're going to work on auto rotations today. So what happens when an aircraft engine fails, right? One of my idols, Neil deGrasse Tyson, super, just really enjoy listening to this guy and to listen to the stuff that he says. However, there's something here that is not quite right in his description, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So an airplane whose engine fails is a glider. We all know that. But a helicopter whose engine fails is a brick. And what we're going to decide, is that true today or not? And we all know that Neil's right on the airplane, right? So airplanes glide. That's how they can handle an engine off scenario. It's very unlikely that something like a 4.7 is going to have a 4-engine failure. However, if they did, they could glide. If they were at 3,500 feet, they could glide with the ratio of 15 to 1, which is about 100 miles, safely gliding without an engine. And that's a 4-engine aircraft. It's very unlikely that 4 engines would fail. It'd be more of like a 1-engine scenario, and then they could fly themselves back home. It'd still be declare an emergency situation. However, single-engine aircraft, definitely a little bit more concerning, a little scary. Single-engine failure, which is it's common, right? I mean, it happens. It's not the most common thing, but it certainly happens. This is what we train for, right? We train for our engine out. But an airplane can glide safely back to location. We all know that. A helicopter, however, cannot glide. And so Neil says it falls like a brick. And let's see if that's true.
Contrary to popular belief, when a helicopter engine fails,
it doesn't just fall straight to the ground, right? A helicopter's not going to just fall straight to the ground. That would be falling like a brick. And so I'd have to disagree with Neil on that example. Let's see what happens when an engine actually fails. But first, I like to give a definition of what we're working on, right? So an auto rotation is a condition of descending flight where following engine failure or deliberate disengagement, the rotor blades are driven solely by aerodynamic forces resulting from the rate of descent of airflow through the rotor, right? So as our helicopter is descending, our blades are still spinning because air is coming from underneath. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll talk a little bit about how that's even possible, which I think is important to understand. So let's take a look at a well-executed auto rotation.
all right, good. Altitude's good, a little bit faster.
All right.
All right. Okay, nice and smooth. You ready?
I'm ready.
And 3, 2, 1. Down, right aft. Good, like that. Rolling it off. Good, catch the spike. Now, perfect.
Outside airspeed RPM. Outside airspeed RPM. Outside airspeed RPM.
Good.
Outside airspeed RPM. Outside airspeed RPM. Outside airspeed RPM.
More.
Outside airspeed RPM.
Okay, ready for it?
Now, if I can just comment here, if anybody has been able, if you can see this, the airspeed essentially stayed perfect. The RPM is really hard to see, but I zoomed in on it earlier, and it's basically right at that 100, 101 area. I mean, these guys executed a really smooth straight in.
All right, little flare now.
Good. Hold it. Hold it. Smooth, bigger flare now. Release the throttle and level raise. Look at that left pedal. That's how you do it.
Nice.
Nice indeed. So that's what happens when we intentionally cut the engine or reduce the engine RPM separate from the rotor RPM, or we have an actual engine failure. So the helicopter will fly, and that's what I really want to emphasize here. Not only will it fly, it likes to fly in the autorotative state. We're doing, there's Pete Gillies talks about this, and there's an FAA presentation coming up tomorrow, where he talks about the helicopter likes to fly in a autorotative state more than it might like to fly actually in a state where the engine is on, because when the engine is on, we're creating a tremendous amount of torque. We need the tail rotor. There's a lot of vibrations. There's a lot of strain on the airframe. There's the drive shaft. There's a lot of things going on when the engine is on. When the engine is off, the helicopter can do almost all the same things it can do with the engine on. It just really can't do a sustained climb. So we can still fly a helicopter with the engine off safely. And that's what we're going to work on, most importantly, safely. But why is it and how can we do this? And that's what we're going to talk about at length a little bit today. So let's look at next. What is it about the mechanics of the helicopter that allow us to disengage from the engine and have the rotor still spin if the engine were to quit? And so we have this upper sheave and lower sheave, as you know by now. And the upper and lower sheave, when we tension it, it pulls the V-belts tight and then engages the drive shaft, right, from the engine and the flywheel down below. Right, so if we have our clutch engaged and these are spinning, how is it possible that when our engine is off, the rotors will continue to spin? You would think if the flywheel stops, then the engine would stop. And that's a likely assumption. However, built into the upper sheave is an internal sprag clutch. So as soon as that engine RPM becomes less than rotor RPM, we're going to engage the freewheeling unit, which automatically disengages the main rotor, allowing it to rotate freely. So here's an example of how a sprag clutch works.
Which consists of an inner and outer race. But unlike the races in a roller clutch, the surfaces are perfectly round, no ramps. In a sprag clutch, it's the individual sprag elements that hold the inner and outer parts together. When the inner part rotates in one direction, the sprag elements are held out of the way. The part turns freely. When the direction of the rotation is changed, the sprag elements turn and hold the inner and outer parts together.
And so as soon as there's no tension on that engine RPM, it rolls and it's able to flow easily. And so without that internal sprag clutch, we wouldn't be able to separate that rotor blade from the engine. So when you have your clutch engaged and the belts are tight, those rotors are still able to flow freely. And that's critical to being able to engage in an auto rotation. So what is the kind of the physical principle behind this, right? This is called the conservation of angular momentum, meaning when that rotor blade is finally free of the engine, it can still spin. Air starts to flow in from underneath the helicopter as it descends, and it keeps the rotors spinning. So think of this as those little dragonfly games that you had as kids where you'd spin those little sticks with the helicopter blades on top. It's the same concept. We're spinning these rotor blades. They're still able to, generate lift, and they're still able to fly. They don't just come slamming to the ground. It's the same concept. Our helicopter basically turned into one of those. So in an engine failure or a simulated engine failure, a helicopter begins an immediate descent. So as soon as that power is taken away, the helicopter will immediately descend a little bit, right? We can control this descent. But as soon as that happens, the air starts to flow instead of a flow from the kind of the forward, not induced, but forward air from the front. We have air flowing in from underneath that keep the rotor blades spinning. So the question is, how do we maintain control of the RPM if what we generally use to control RPM is our throttle and our power from our collective, right? If we're pulling power, we're controlling RPM. How is it that we can control RPM if we don't have power? Well, the air coming in from underneath the helicopter can be controlled. We can control the RPM by adjusting blade pitch and adjusting the attitude of the helicopter, or the yaw of the helicopter, to kind of help, primarily attitude, but to help manage that rotor RPM just by the way we put the rotor blade into the relative wind. And so on the R22, We know we need to be at 101 to 104 with power on. With power off, we can be upwards of 110 to 90. This gauge here is off of 44, as you guys all likely know. And on the 44, it's a little tighter. We need to be 101, 102. But with power off, we can be upwards of 108 or as low as 90. So you see that on the gauge there. So what we say, Richard Mornington Sanford wrote a book on this. It's called Keep the RPM in the Green. And if we can do that in unpowered flight, keep the RPM in the green, we can almost do anything that we could do if we had power, except a sustained climb. Like we can do a climb, it's just not sustained. But yeah, we can do essentially anything we could do as long as we're keeping that RPM in the green. And that's really what we're doing, is we're manipulating the controls to keep that RPM in the green. As we advance, we'll talk about power management, we'll talk about or energy management, but this is just like a basic kind of understanding of how this system works and how we manipulate it to get what we want it to do. Right. So what is the sequence, right? If we have just an immediate engine failure, that's a little bit different than initiating an engine failure. And we're going to talk about how to handle immediate or how to handle unexpected engine failures a little bit later in our training. Right now, we're going to focus on how do we, what is the sequence for entering an auto rotation for our training purposes. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to lower that collective to take pitch out of the rotor. So our pitch is set for flight. When we lower that collective, we take that pitch out of the rotor. What that does is it reduces that induced drag and it keeps that rotor blade from stalling. And so what happens, we only have a few seconds for that to happen. Once we start to let off power, we need to immediately lower that collective, or the angle of attack is going to be enough to where we could potentially get into a rotor stall scenario where we don't have any power driving those rotors. The relative wind from underneath is going to slow them down to the point within a couple seconds that we would have a rotor stall. Rotor stall is unrecoverable. If we get to the point where we can't lower the collective enough and get those RPMs back up where they need to be, that is where Neil deGrasse Tyson is correct. That is where the helicopter will end up just falling like a brick. So that is what he's not wrong, but he's not completely right. So that is what we're trying to avoid, right? So as we learn to fly the helicopter with the engine off, we're learning to kind of manipulate the collective to sort of give us some of the control inputs that we're looking for, right? So as RPM goes up, the collective comes up, right? RPM goes up, we're going to raise that pitch a little bit, slow the rotor blade down. As RPM goes down, we need to lower that pitch a little bit to help those blades speed back up a little bit, right? Trying to keep it in the green. RPM, add RPM gauge to slides. I didn't do that. As a note that I made myself. Anyway, the POH actually discusses this. This is a caution statement under normal procedures in unpowered flight. It said simulated engine failure requires prompt lowering of the collective to avoid dangerously low RPM. Catastrophic rotor stall could occur if the RPM ever drops below 80%, plus 1% per 1,000 feet of altitude. Now that 1% of 1,000 feet of altitude is an estimate. That's a guess, right? I mean, it's not 100% accurate. It's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a guideline. And so let's think about that when we're here at altitude in Denver. We're flying at 7,000 DA. Our max glide percentage is 90%. We could get the rotor potentially as low as 90% if we want to extend our glide as far as possible. If that's the case, and we're at 7,000 DA, that would put us at 87%. We would only have potentially 3% to work with before we got into a catastrophic rotor stall scenario. So we want to be exceptionally careful when we when we have our rotor RPM so low to extend that glide. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on keeping our rotor RPM right around 97, 98 to 101 approximately, right? So we're going to work on an entry that has a nice, stable rotor RPM. We don't want it to get too low. We also don't want it to get too high. We'll talk about that a little bit too. So what else we're going to do is we're going to roll off the throttle, right? And so we put our fingernails to the sky, and that way we can't roll the wrong direction. We can only roll throttle off, right? So we're going to overgrip the throttle, fingernails to the sky, and roll off throttle. Now, if we were to roll the wrong direction, we could potentially throttle up the helicopter, raise the RPM so high that we could get into an overspeed situation. Overspeed is something that we are very conscious of and something that we're really working to try to avoid. Overspeed can happen in a number of different scenarios. Rolling throttle is one of the more common ones. So we're going to be really conscious of how we grip that throttle and how we reduce that throttle. So again, the POH says avoid inadvertent engine stoppage. Do not chop the throttle to simulate a power failure. Now, we might do that when we're close to the ground, practicing hover autos, but we're not going to do that at 1,500 feet practicing auto rotations. Always roll the throttle smoothly. Recover immediately if the engine is rough or the engine RPM continues to drop. Roll throttle back on. We note that the governor is active below 80. We're aware of that. And then when entering an auto rotation from above 4,000 feet, reduce the throttle slightly before lowering the collective. And that's how we're going to do that at altitude here. Denver's always in the 4+, 5, 6, 7. I think it was almost 8 today, right? So when we roll off here, we're gonna roll off and we're gonna lower gently. And we're gonna do this all nice and smooth, but that's gonna be part of the sequence, which we'll talk about here in a moment. All right. So when we take the engine torque away from the helicopter, what happens, right? And I'd expect the student to be able to tell me what happens here when we take the engine torque out of the tail rotor, or when we take the engine torque out, and how the tail rotor affects the helicopter. We know that our engine, our nose is going to turn to the left because the propeller on the side of our helicopter is pushing us in that other direction, just like it would be on an airplane. It's just pulling us to the right. So we need to use that right pedal to help stabilize the yaw of the helicopter. So nose will yaw to the left. We're going to correct with a little bit of right pedal. Not a ton necessarily, just what is needed. And we'll talk about that a little bit further too. So additionally, if there wasn't enough already to do, we need to add a little bit of aft cyclic to load the rotor disc. Okay, so lowering the collective never stops the RPM from dropping. It just slows down how rapidly they drop until aft cyclic is applied to stop it, right? So the pilot must apply aft cyclic to get the air flowing through the rotor blades from underneath, okay? Forward cyclic increases airspeed, but it reduces our RPM. Aft cyclic will decrease our airspeed, but it will increase our RPM. And we're going to learn to control the helicopter using some of the cyclic. So here's an example from Jay at Helicopter Training Videos on what this looks like. We'll watch this a couple times. So here we go. Downright. Watch the foot, watch the cyclic, and more importantly, watch just above the compass. Look at those two bolts. I want you to keep an eye on the horizon and how the helicopter doesn't really lose attitude, and the yaw is very minimal. Watch this again. So that right foot, aft cyclic, and notice how there's really not a lot of attitude loss. Watch it again. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to initiate an auto by lowering collective, rolling off, lowering collective, right pedal to maintain yaw, aft cyclic to load that rotor disc, all while keeping the helicopter from nosing down and gaining airspeed. That's part of the reason why we pull aft, to try to keep that level attitude. We don't want our helicopter going down, nose down. We don't want it ballooning back up, because that's going to lead to dramatic RPM swings through collective movement. So we need to find a way to enter an auto rotation and keep our attitude and our helicopter essentially level in the initiation. Okay. So here's an example of how we're going to do this in our first drill. Our first drill, we're going to go up to altitude. We're going to go up to 1,500 feet. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on just lowering the collective, but not rolling off the throttle. We're initiating essentially just a descent by lowering the collective. And what we're going to see is that when we do that, our helicopter wants to kind of nose down. So we're going to take the measures that is required to keep that helicopter level, maintain airspeed, and keep that nice level attitude. And you'll notice when we watch this, you'll see that we just kind of a little bit of aft cyclic.
Knots or whatever it is at altitude, we just lower the collective a little bit, make sure the student focuses on where the airframe meets the horizon.
Yep.
And maintains that attitude, doesn't look in at all. Count to 2 or 3 seconds. Now
Do
look
it
in.
again.
If the airspeed's within 5 knots of where we started, success. We can hold attitude.
So what we're trying to do here is hold attitude. Once we can hold altitude and we know what it feels like when we start to lower that collective, how the helicopter will react, then we can go through the next steps of an auto rotation. But that's the first thing we're going to do. And we're going to do that at approximately 1,500 feet. All right, so let's put all this together and chair fly it. We're going to go out to the helicopter and we're going to work through we're going to work through the sequence together in the helicopter. And some of the things that we're looking for when we're out there, this is an R22 gauge, which we aren't flying R22s in Colorado, but that's okay. Gets the point across. We're trying to keep our RPM above 97, right around there, and right around that 101 mark, right? So we're trying to keep this RPM in the green, essentially, right? And we want to keep our airspeed between 60 and 70. So those are the stats we're looking for on the gauges. However, we're not going to be focusing on the gauges. We're going to focus on getting a nice entry first, right? So first thing, roll off, lower collective, right pedal is needed to correct for yaw, gentle aft cyclic. This is something that can all be done within a matter of milliseconds, right? We're rolling off, lowering right, and then aft, all sort of at the same time, simultaneous-ish, right? And just gently aft to load that rotor disc. We don't want to pull back so hard that the helicopter is going to balloon up. We're just going to gently aft, try to keep that level attitude. So when we do this, I'll be on the controls with you, but I want you to try to do it where we can keep that nose at a level attitude. I'll do one, you do one, etc. So we're going to keep a level attitude. We're going to then look inside and kind of get an idea of what our airspeed and what our RPM look like. And then eyes back outside. We're going to listen. What does it sound like when the helicopter spools up a little bit or slows down? Really listen and feel is a big portion of what an auto rotation is. It's not necessarily staring at your gauges, which we all have a tendency to do, but we're going to work on breaking that. We're going to focus on looking outside and listening. And we're going to glide. We're going to glide for a while, and then we're going to learn to crack to 80 and recover. Just roll that throttle on a little bit. Let the RPM or let the correlator and the governor take over at 80%, and it'll pop that engine RPM back up. We'll pull pitch and we'll fly away, climb back up to 1,500, and we'll do it again. And this is something we're going to do over and over and over, okay? And once we get good at it, this is an example of what your regular old perfect auto entry or auto rotation look like. This is a standard run-of-the-mill auto rotation. Down right aft. Point your nose to the ground. Fly it. 0 airspeed, if you guys are noticing that. Yeah, let's just flip it backwards and set it down. Full down auto rotation. And then spool it back up. So obviously that's a joke. That's not the auto rotations we're going to be doing. That's an advanced auto rotation. However, I think it's important to see this because it's important to know that once you engage in an auto and you're in a good glide, you're safe, you're stable, or you're in a good position to fly a helicopter, and there's a lot you can do beyond just that gentle flight. So we don't necessarily need we can kind of break out some of that fear. This helicopter is capable of a lot more than what we're doing. We're doing a very basic intro to this, and we'll watch more of these advanced autos down the road. But we'll work on this auto entry and then going forward, some of the things that we're going to work on. This is going to be that post-auto entry training after we've got this skill pretty well dialed. What we're going to do is we're going to work on advanced aerodynamic principles. We're going to work on energy management. We're going to understand the common errors that are experienced during auto rotations, and these are all going to be done through ground lessons. We're going to go over the emergency procedures in section 3 of the POH. What are the conditions that require an auto rotation? There's only 3, and you will know those. So when it comes check ride time, you don't say you should enter an auto when you shouldn't enter an auto. We're going to take the helicopter up, and we're going to glide at altitude. We're going to enter the auto rotation, and then we're going to start manipulating the controls a little bit to see how they affect RPM in our auto rotative state. We're going to start pushing forward a little bit. We're going to pull aft a little bit. We're going to raise and lower cyclic collective a little bit. We'll continue to refine and dial in our emphasis on quick stop. On quick stops, we'll emphasize the importance of that, and we'll work on that quick stop training. We will start doing straight in autos once we get our flares dialed in our quick stops, which is essentially what a quick stop is. It's one, it's a quick way to stop the helicopter, but 2, it's a good way to practice for the flare in an auto rotation, which is how we terminate an auto generally. And so we'll start practicing autos with that flare and our 300-foot checks, the things we want to pay attention to right before we either continue with the auto rotation or we decide to pull power and go around. We'll do some max glide or close to max glide flying, right? So we'll do minimum glides, we'll do max glides. In the 44, we're looking at 1 nautical mile, or 4-to-1 glide ratio, 1 nautical mile between around 1,500 feet, which I don't know if that's really that possible. I'm sure some guys can do it, but it seems a little ambitious to me. And then we'll work on auto rotations with turns. All right, with that, let's go fly some helicopters and start practicing auto entries. There's a lot more to this. I've got a lot of other things that I've built in, but the purpose of this presentation was really just to talk about that first lesson with a student. And that is essentially my presentation. There you have it. Cool, so now we can kind of open it up for discussion. Anybody have any comments on that? Again, I used the resources I had, Jay, my own experiences, helicopter training videos, Pete Gillis, all this information I've accumulated over the years, and kind of put together a plan that I think seems logical for kind of a first student lesson. Any thoughts?
Bro, it's crickets out there. All right, so real quick, John, great job.
You think so? Thanks, man.
Very, very thorough and detailed as always. I think when it comes down to it, when you're actually flying it, it's an undescribable feeling when you first do that auto rotation from the left seat, because now you're it. Your instructor is no longer there. You are the guy.
Right.
So I think that's the one thing nobody ever told me. And so when I got back to the ground, I was like, whew, good thing I got that right.
Yeah,
you know. And then when you transition to other aircrafts, you know, now you have to teach yourself other auto rotative states. You know, like when I went into the Cabri, I didn't train in the Cabri.
Right.
So I had to pretty much take what I knew from the Robinson product and just say, hey, you know, I know this should have more rotor RPM. So just as long as I follow the basics of it, everything should be fine. So and it takes just practice. You know, you get comfortable with it. But you know, you're so passionate with doing the ground stuff that I'm sure when it comes to the air stuff, it's just going to come pretty easy.
Thanks, man. And so when you transitioned over to the Cabri, did you climb up to altitude and do some kind of roll off throttle and get a feel for?
Yeah, I did do that, and then the Cabri has a particular thing. You know, it has some particulars with it. That you'll see, you know, as I started watching some of the factory training videos, I started noticing those things afterwards. But at first, I was like, "Oh crap, we messed something up. Let's check it out. Let's reassess." So anytime that you feel like there might be something up with a helicopter, set it down. Obviously, it sounds so common, but a lot of people don't. I know a lot of people that don't do it. They try to push it. They try to, maybe put it in the back burner. It's not worth it. Go ahead, set it down, shut it down, take a look at it. I think being honest in this business goes a long way rather than try to hide stuff. Those are the people that don't do well in this business, honestly.
Yeah, I believe you. And I found the overall mentality to be that, like the honest sort of let's not push it. But that's just been the environment I've been in. Now I've heard stories, of course, but it seems like that's the overall consensus. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I know both sides of the coin, from people trying to hide stuff and then, very shortly after getting fired, just because that's just not what they wanted. They wanted you to, if you need to pull it off the rooftop, pull it off the rooftop. They don't want to jeopardize safety, so absolutely. I think this helps us because we are already, the people that are sitting here in this room are safety conscious. It's the people that are out there in the street and they're saying, "Hey, look at this," or, what have you. That's some of the people that would love to get in here and, show them the way that it should be.
Join that fast team, man. So anybody else have any comments? If not, Diego, I'd like to kind of get your opinion on your experience learning autos recently here in Colorado at Elevation. Did some of the things that I mentioned, does that seem like it would be effective, or did it kind of mimic what you learned a little bit at all? Or do you have any, get some of your opinion on that, some of your comments? Diego, by the way, everybody, is a friend of mine. He's a student pilot here in Colorado. He just soloed recently, so a huge accomplishment. Did great on his written. We haven't been able to fly together yet. Hopefully soon we will, but we've been doing a lot of ground and just kind of hanging out, talking shop for a while. But we flew at the same school for a little while, so just curious, Diego. Tell me a little bit about your experience with Autorotations here at Elevation in the 44.
Well, I really don't got much experience. As you know, I only have probably 50 hours right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess I don't really have a solid opinion right now. I'm still working on that part of my training. But
have you dropped any?
I guess no, not on my own, I guess.
So instructor on the controls for the most part?
Yeah, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I've done maybe 2 where I've been on the controls.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
But not fully, for sure.
Have you gone up to altitude and just tried what I was talking about regarding lowering the collective and learning to kind of manipulate attitude and airspeed?
Yeah, we did do a couple of 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
Autos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would be doing a little better, but Wesley was always pretty scared of letting me be on the controls more,
Yeah, no, I understand.
And,
Same. And I think that's understandable,
And I don't think I ever did anything for him to be scared of, like, me being on the controls like that. But
there's a lot of
I guess
responsibility
that's
in that seat.
just how he was.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibilities in that seat, and I totally get it. You want to make sure that nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, of course.
And that's why I think for me too, my experience was just kind of thrown into the fire. It's like, here's how it's done. And then I would just do them a little bit here and there, a little bit here and there, and my instructor would sort of primarily be on the controls a lot of times. I would, catch little things here and there, but I never really felt like I initiated or completed autos by myself really until commercial training.
Yeah.
So, and that's really something I think as a CFI I want to try to avoid. I want to try to get the foundation set early on, and build that confidence, and that safety aspect too. So when you and I go fly, when I have that CFI, brother, we're gonna go do them at altitude and do them slowly and just start, tiptoeing into it till you get comfortable manipulating the aircraft with the engine off. And I would encourage you to maybe even recommend that to your instructor. Like, hey, can we go up a couple thousand feet AGL and just fly around a little bit so you can feel what, how to manipulate the kind of the collective and the cyclic to get the RPMs where you need them to go.
I've always wondered, is there any reason why we are not allowed to do the same thing with autos, like when we're doing, at the beginning when you start and they give you like the collective, they give you the cyclic.
Right.
Is there any reason why we don't do it that way?
Right. So autos? Like the instructor lowers, rolls off and right pedal, and then you just use you're just on the cyclic. Something like that. Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe one of the more experienced CFIs can kind of add some thoughts on that. But that's a really good point, because when we were learning, like, I would just be on the pedals for a little bit, or I would just be on the collective or the cyclic,
Right.
That's a really good point.
Just a slow process.
Yeah, tiptoeing.
So my honest opinion is, what I observed when I was getting trained was a lot of these CFIs don't have a lot of experience. So they are learning themselves. So it's hard for them to give you full control. Now, when you get some of these older people, like I think tomorrow, that's going to be an excellent presentation. I think John already alluded to it with Pete Gillies.
Yeah.
They've been there, they've done that, so they can let you get to a certain point and then be able to recover faster than a 200 or 300 hour instructor that's barely just getting the confidence themselves to do the maneuver. So I definitely like the video that John showed, the guy doing the advanced auto rotations. That's John East. If you go train with him, you can better believe that he's going to let you, kind of play with the auto and then just see, because he's so experienced that, you can ask him to do full downs. You can ask him to do many things, as opposed to if you go to your regular old flight school and, Johnny just got their certificate the other day and here they are. Hey, they're teaching. They're out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we get experience. We were all new at one point. But all I'm saying is spend the money to train with people that you actually know are advanced, and don't, just because you're a CFI, don't think, well, I don't need to pay money for flight training. We're always learning. So every now and then, even the trainer needs to get trained again and see what bad habits might have developed.
Trained again. That's true. I mean, I got to say, I've flown with 7 or 8 CFIs at this point. 4 of them, more than half, had under 300 hours. And it's noticeable, because the ones that I've flown with that have 700, 800 or 1,000 or more hours, they are noticeably different instructors. Their confidence is better. The cockpit, the feeling in the cockpit is different. The aura is different. The whole experience is different. And I would like to go. And that's, like you said, Jay. Just reflecting what you said. That's part of the reality. Unless you go through Jay's course at Leading Edge, where it's preparing you to be super CFI, which I intend to do at some point here.
He's coming in. He's got his camera on, so he's about to come in.
About to chime in. Oh, you're muted, though. You're muted, buddy. Oh no.
We
I
can
know.
hear you.
I know. He's cracking jokes over there. We can all hear him laughing, but we
I
can.
know.
Okay, time
What
out.
is,
Are you back? Hey, let's see.
hold on. Technical difficulties,
Yeah,
I
he's just
swear.
having.
That's why we have a whole hour tomorrow.
Yeah. It happens
uh,
to him every once in a while.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about that tomorrow. We go ahead, Jay, if you wanna. Until Jay
No,
gets
no,
back.
go ahead, John.
Cool.
Promote it if you want, please.
Yeah. So tomorrow we're talking. We have an FA presentation, a fast team presentation with Pete Gillies, helicopter legend. He's going to talk not only about cyclic back, but he's going to talk about low rotor RPM in the flare and some training techniques and a few other things. I'll kind of help guide him through with a little bit of a presentation, but it'll be for Wings credit. The link is in the Max Performance channel. Encourage you all to join. It's Jay set it up. Fly Jay set it up. He's been doing a lot of that good fast team stuff. We've had some really heavy hitters in there, and we're excited to kind of talk with Pete tomorrow. I think he's excited too.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully you can do these. We can all do these, JB and you and,
Yeah.
independently host them. Melanie is an excellent resource to actually allow us to use Zoom Government.
Absolutely.
And so I'm very happy. It's almost like this thing's grown legs because I'm getting calls to the point where I'm like, oh my God, okay. Just people asking like, hey, what are you guys doing? What is this thing? And I'm like, it's just a fast team presentation.
That's terrific.
I guess, yeah, I'm really excited for it. But I know it's gonna go great. So far it's been a great learning experience. There he is.
You just no.
You hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
I had to go for the big recording microphone.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that
everyone.
It's about you ready to spit some rhymes, dude.
I want to talk about a few things that Jay just said as well. But first of all, back to the lesson plan.
Yeah.
John, I love a few things that I think are great for anyone's lesson plans. That student competency, you're sort of laying out the assumptions of where the student sits. I think that's a really smart way to lay out a lesson plan for evaluation with someone. Like, I know you're not a real private pilot, but this is where I think the student is, and as I give you this lesson. I love the hook too, with Neil deGrasse Tyson's tweet and the little circle back there. Yeah. And the fun fact, 100 miles from 36,000 feet, that's very impressive. But also the chair fly thing. You didn't go, that's a really important part. I think we all know that when we were learning autos, how important it was, like many maneuvers, but I think especially autos, is just to get in that chair and close your eyes and just kind of, or in the helicopter if it's not running, and play around with it there. But anyway, back to what Jay was saying. Great advice there. I mean, an understanding of when new instructors are teaching this, the margins for them are different than someone who's been doing it for a while. And yeah, I remember the first time I did an auto, and I sort of see it quite regularly at the flight school. Come back from that first flight where they've done that auto with the student, and that's a big part of what drives that dangerous student error training program we do at the flight school with the instructors to kind of run through that auto intervention training through a sim session and 3 flights. We just had, and back to what Jay was saying about, it's even the teachers getting some additional training. We got a guy here this week who's doing that training with me, and he's started a little flight school of his own. And he just wanted to he never went through a big flight school that had, I don't think many places have that kind of level of training. So he just wanted to run through that with me, and in the sim and in the helicopter, we did a lot of, all the things that students do. Well, not all the things, we can't think of everything, but as much as we can to try and prepare those instructors to give them a little bit more margin and safety. And also to sort of going back to what Jay said again, is like you need to, it's, as a new student and a new instructor, that's a very bad pairing because the instructor can't give them what they need, and the student doesn't know to ask or to know that anything's different. I remember the very first auto I did on my stage check, so I've probably been 25, 30 hours in or something. And we entered the auto, and I'm flying with a stage check instructor, one of the most senior instructors in the school 15 years ago. And we entered the auto, I put the collective all the way down, I rolled off, and the collective didn't catch itself as it normally does, because my instructor had always been so hands-on. He had basically been doing it. He was a brand new instructor. And the stage check instructor watched the RPMs build and kind of bumped them up and said, you know, you got to catch that a bit. And it was like I was flying the auto with all the dampening turned off. I suddenly realized how much was me versus what my instructor was doing for me. I see it a lot with brand new instructors who are so used to flying the aircraft that they have not had the ability to look ahead, say 1 or 2 seconds, to see the moment that the collective is supposed to go up and back themselves off 1 or 2 seconds to get the words out for the student to try to do it before it actually has to happen. And instead they're kind of saying it in the moment that it has to happen, and there's no room or time for the student to make that before the instructor's kind of doing it for them, because that's when we've got to do it. And I think that's just kind of the way it is with 200-hour instructors, and we're not going to get away from that in the US. But it's experience. It's just, you know, having an experience. It is what it is.
You know, you brought up a good point there. What I didn't say in the sequence was bumping up. Not that I don't know why I didn't add that. So we're going to roll off, throttle, lower collective right pedal as needed, gentle half cyclic, but I didn't bring in that bump up portion. And so
and I think it depends. Not everywhere does that. You know, not everywhere needs to do that, I should say. You know, I don't know. Did anyone fly down in Florida and have to do that?
I mean, it all depends on the aircraft, because they're all different. So some of them need more bump up, some of them don't need as much bump up. So definitely it depends on what you're flying. So keep that in mind. Now, I will admit a horrible habit that I do. I am guilty of not putting the collective down all the way. So whenever I do train with somebody, I give away my nasty habit so I can force myself to do it. Because if they catch me doing it, I already told them, hey, this is a bad habit that I have. So just watch out for it. You know, so sometimes you develop these habits, and I know you should go all the way down, but sometimes they don't. So,
well, that RPM, that engine RPM often kind of sits right around 70, 60, 70 anyway, generally, right? So you're kind of right in that range, but not far from the correlator doing its thing, or the governor doing its thing.
I like to keep it on either side, like especially now with the cavalry. So below 400, the governor is ineffective, right? So as I cross over, now I know that I've disengaged and that I'm not going to get the governor to start messing with me.
Right.
But I like to have it right there, because if something does happen, I want to be able to let the governor do his job. That, I guess it came from watching the Raven 2s, where they would chop a lot and shut themselves off. So I'd rather know that I have a working engine than not, because if I don't have a working engine, guess what? I'm doing a real auto rotation.
Right.
So that's one of the things. I know some people that don't. They're like, no, go full idle. We should be at full idle. That's just the way that it has to be. So there's always, when it comes to helicopter pilots, there's always many schools of thoughts and reasons that we're doing things. I think it's very important, as long as we're doing something safe, and the majority, it's an agreement, by all means. If you can justify what you're doing, it's really where it leads at. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Jay?
Yeah, I agree. We see people come from other schools and they have slightly different variations on the power recovery. Some schools won't roll the throttle up. They'll just raise the collective in the flare and let the correlation come up. And I think that was one of the videos we watched where I heard the instructor say loose grip on the throttle and raise, and the correlation just brings it up. I wish we could do that, but up at the high DA, the engine just won't come up quick enough if we kind of start at 80% there, especially in the Ravens with more metal to move. So that's one variation I've seen. I've seen it also rolling down slightly before entering. I've seen holding the throttle back at say 75% rather than going to idle. We don't do that one, and the reason I think we've never had any problems. A lot of our Ravens idle quite high. They're probably idling about 75% anyway, so we're there as far as the idle position goes. But the 22s, we'll bring them down to idle with that. We just bring them to that point. And I think part of the reason of that is that it reduces the chance of the correlator opening the throttle into the governed range whilst in the glide, and in particular the last bit of the glide at the start of the flare, where as they raise a little bit and the governor brings it up, but no one's really announced it, and then in the flare, without looking, they go to wrap the throttle on, and it's already at 100%, and we just have this instant overspeed.
Right.
But I'd be curious. I see some new names and faces there. What other people are doing, or what other people are seeing from wherever their flight school is. Pat and Rotary Wing and Troy and everyone.
I saw Troy pop on. I saw his face show up for a second there. My man, what's up? You're on mute, brother.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
It's good to see everybody. I'm just listening in and learning from all your techniques on the Ravens and the Robinsons, because my whopping 5 hours of the 5,200 hours in Robinsons does not qualify me to speak much.
You're out flying fires right now?
But auto's an auto, right? I'm sorry?
You out flying fires right now?
Yeah, we're out here in the western slope of Colorado. Had a couple fires last week, so standing by for stuff tomorrow.
So what's the big difference then? I mean, you heard how we're dropping autos here in the 44. Are you guys pulling F cyclic in the Blackhawk? Are you, or are you just kind of lowering collective and the ship kind of writes itself?
Well, because it's a 2-engine aircraft, we never actually reduce power to the engines because it's just not a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But we obviously enter the auto rotation, let the rotor system freewheel, or let the engine freewheel against the rotor system, and you're just managing it. Normally, our entry pointers are 1,000 feet, like I think most everybody. Everybody's got a bucket speed or a particular speed they're looking at. But yes, to answer your question, a lot of the basic physics of any one helicopter compared to another are similar. You're going to have a rotor speed up. We for habit transfer, we will always say, okay, collective's got to be full down. But then you're immediately, as you guys are describing, bump up. We just say collective increase, but bump up a little bit to get that rotor instantly under control, because it will spool over your limits pretty quick. When we find ourselves in autorotative states, not in training on a regular basis. Example, we're at 9,500 feet on a fire, and we have to go down to a dip site, a reservoir, and it's at 7,500 feet. And it happens on occasion that go, and they'll begin a big descent, and you glance over and you can feel it like any helicopter. You feel it and hear it long before you see it on a gauge. And like, oh, hey, low power setting, and we do everything in percent, not in RPM, but so 100% is where it should be. Hey, look, it's at 106. Maybe increase that collective a little bit. So just to get the engine back engaged, so it's not freewheeling.
Yeah.
The rotor system. But I could just go on, but I won't. I know there's a lot of other people. You guys are talking Robinson stuff, and I'm just gleaning great knowledge as I look forward to going back to Florida on my weeks off and connecting with a flight school there and try my stab at being a double I again, get my recertification back.
That'd be awesome. Well, FlyJ is down in Florida. He's a CFI down there. I know a couple guys too. So we should meet up next time you head down. I go down there pretty frequently and fly, so that'd be great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite to your group. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Glad you're here.
I will shut up.
Yeah. You reflected something that Jay said in his in the common student errors, which is you'll often hear it before you see it. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Jay?
Yeah. So, hang on, give me a microphone. I think there's 3 stages really. I think you feel it first. With enough experience, you'll feel the light or the heavy, you know, the build or the drop in the RPMs are coming. Then I'm hearing that slight build or drop. I think that I feel, this is just my experience, that those tacks are taking some sort of average reading that seems to be behind what I'm actually hearing happening in the rotor system, and certainly behind what I'm feeling where it loads up and then it's going to start spooling up or spooling down. And I think we also know that, you know, these collective inputs are generally taking a second or two to sort of materialize on an RPM change. Cyclic's quick, but and it's very easy for a student to get into the cycle of, they see the problems of the RPM, and to them RPM is everything, and in the big picture it is, right? RPM's life for us, but they fixate on the RPM and they're pulling the collective and it's not reacting, so they're pulling some more. And then it kicks in and the RPMs come tanking down. And the whole time they're just looking in and pumping collective. And, airspeed's going all over the place because attitude's changing with the collective inputs. And that goes back to, actually, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, there's the chant, you hear it quite a bit with outside RPM airspeed or some variation on that. And I think we talked about this on some previous webinar that we were doing, that the emphasis, if anything, should maybe be outside, or outside in a big, long, drawn-out accent or something, and then coming in. But I think if you train initial students from the get-go that they keep their eyes outside, and you only point out what you need them to see it in the moment, and you really focus a lot on doing autos before they're even ready to do autos, you focus on doing some demonstrations of autos and pointing out, hey, you feel that, you hear that, you hear that. And I'm raising the collective, but now look, it takes a second or two, and they can see and hear all that because they're not flying the helicopter. It's the best time for them to learn autos is when they're not flying autos, almost, right? You know what I mean? And you have to be careful with that because otherwise you're just flying the helicopter all day and they're paying for you to, take them on an air tour. But you get the idea that there's a lot going on other than just pushing the controls around that can be extremely helpful for building the primacy with the student. And it goes back to that very first piece of the nose diving over on the entry and all those various things. But there's a lot to teach a student without them flying where they can pick up on those little cues, I think.
If I can add something, Jay, and I completely agree with your assessment. We have specific things we look for at the entry of an auto. I mean, I'm going to be flying goggles tomorrow night to get current again. And I know we're going to do a couple of autos, me and another fellow, my colleague. We always look, and I'm gonna say we look for 5 things, and I gotta look up and remember all 5. But the things that come to mind are: I've got a place to land, the rotors in the green, whatever the green is for your respective aircraft. I'm in trim. I've got my airspeed, and I think the other one's checking the engine status. But if you know what you're looking for, it's not a random scan. It's a very specific, targeted glance in, get what I need, make adjustments, and get back outside. And then cross-monitor through the rest of the maneuver.
I just recently, to reflect on that, I recently went up and dropped some autos up here at altitude, and it had been a little while. And I made the mistake that I've been making since I started, and that was in entering an auto rotation and fixating on the RPM, right? And it's like, that was something that when I started to learn to take my eyes off the RPM and focus out on the horizon, how much better my auto rotations are, my comfort level got, everything. And so it was just a quick reminder. I had a good CFI that helped me remind me of that. And then autos started to go really, really smoothly once they had that moment of get your eyes off the gauges. And I hope that should I ever get into an actual engine out scenario, that my training kicks in to the point where I can be calm, look outside, and fly that helicopter. Focusing on not just staring at the gauges, but who knows if that really happens, what'll happen.
It's not like you're giving up on the. You're not giving up on the RPM if you're using your other senses. If you're using your hearing. And if you trust your instructor and your instructor says, I'm not going to let you overspeed this, trust me, you focus on keeping your eyes moving, I assure you we will not, I'll take care of that. Yeah. And that's my job. Your job is to look outside, hear, feel, And if you're behind the aircraft, I'll tell you. But
And I'm sure you guys have, and my ignorance is blissful, and so if I'm speaking out of turn, you can feel free. But for us in the military, and that's my 35 years of experience, but we have thresholds that if steady state conditions are not met by a certain altitude, then throttle's coming back on, we're terminating this maneuver, and we're powered up and getting out. So for us, it's 300 a day, 500 at night.
Yeah, so we have those check altitudes too, and the ACS just recently released a change. So in an auto with a turn, you have to be out of the turn at 300 feet, right, before you recover or start your recovery. And it depends on the instructor, but it's between 100 generally and 300 feet check. And what is it that you do at that check? You make sure your RPM's in the green, your airspeed's good, you're in trim, and you're completed a turn. And if that's the case, then you continue. Jay, that's right. He has very specific words. We continue. If not, we roll on and abort the auto rotation.
Power recovery.
Power recovery.
Yeah.
Whatever the school or whoever it's military or whoever it is, I'm sure standardization about what everyone's expecting to hear at those moments and go for. I think is really important. We use 200. 200 is is the trigger point. So the instructor says 200, and then continue, go around, or my controls. And they only do the go around if the student has been trained to do the go around. Otherwise, a brand new student is 200 continue, 200 my controls, and we keep it really short and. There's no discussion. There's no reason why. There's no. You kind of it's continue or whatever, and when we say continue, there's always the gate opportunity to go around later. But that's just that's the gate to get through to continue below 200, and then we also encourage the instructors, especially with new students, if it's say top end of the RPM and top end of the airspeed ranges like the boxes or the other end, it would say continue, and then we might say high energy or low energy, and then we'll modify the flare. I mean, every flare is different anyway, but we're trying to sort of help the student realize this is a progressive flare, this is more of an abrupt flare, depending on what it is. Standardization.
Oh yes, works. I was going to take the opportunity to talk about, you said engine out scenario, but just any old emergency, right? So I had when I was working at Myrtle Beach doing tours, I had a door come open in the middle of a tour. Like it had been already flying a couple of minutes, and the door just popped open, and I was able to catch it with my left hand. And so I'm like, okay, that's great. Well, I still got to use my left hand to lower this collective and set up my approach. So what do? We never, most of the time, we're training with the door off, right? So the door is not even a thing for us. But in between all that, I could definitely go back. And in my mind, I heard that instructor said, let go of that door. My primary instructor, the train, said, let go of the door, slow down. Who cares? There's no reason to crash this aircraft because of the stinking door, So if you have good enough instruction, somebody that train you, your mind will doing those things. And I swear it was an amazing thing. Now, of course, when I got back to the ground, I would have kicked it out of trim and I would have closed it. I would have done this. And I'm like, at the moment, my whole, goal was not to crash that aircraft because I had a door open in flight. So, needless to say, those people were probably not going to take another helicopter tour because they were probably like, what the heck is going on? The doors are coming up and all this craziness. But at the end of the day, we got the aircraft down safely. Learned a valuable lesson, but definitely just to get back to it, when you have emergencies, the training your muscle memory will kick in too. So, yeah.
They talk about that exact same scenario in the Robinson safety course and how it led to a fatality where the pilot took his hand off the cyclic and closed the door. Lost control of the aircraft. It was wild.
Yeah, I think I was an R-44 in Australia in about 2013. I had a photographer in the back. They were only about 30 or 40 feet up. Because the right door was off, the pilot didn't realize that his door was unlatched. You know, when you open a door, you hear that sound. And of course, with the door off, you can hear anything. One of the things we do in our pre-takeoff checks is cockpit secure and clear, so we're looking for everything. And then door closed, we hit the door. You know, actually put your elbow against it. Don't assume because the latch is down, it's closed, because in this case that it was. And the other thing, going back to the 44s, they have a door limiter, right? They have those little pistons on. It's not like this thing's going to reverse and snap off on you like we're doing a 22. The guy I was flying with today, he's practicing vertical reference with me at the same time, and he opens his door. I was like, "It's your aircraft. You do what you want." And he's coming down, looking out of his door with his door flapping around. He's like, "There's a limiter on it. It won't go forward." I said, "All right, your aircraft."
Your aircraft, your insurance, not my problem.
Oh, we've seen door hinges on 44s fail, and it's because students will pre-flight and leave the door open, and then the wind of another helicopter or something will push it against those limiters, but it puts real stress on those. I think I've got one found on pre-flight of a crack across the door pin piece of metal or whatever it is. It's not infallible.
Yeah, they're very flimsy. Yeah, I'm always closing the cowling doors and shutting the doors when I'm not. If I'm not using it and it's open, it's closed. I don't leave it open and walk around and go somewhere else and come back to it. What's the word when primacy? Somebody taught me that first right away, and that stuff stuck with me. I love that, being taught the right way the first time. Well, we've been chatting a lot. Anybody else in this group have any comments or want to present anything? I think it's worth bringing it out there. We got a handful of other guys in here. Diego, thanks for commenting, by the way. I'm glad you're here, brother. Thank you. That was awesome. Anybody else?
Yeah. I was going to say, or even introduce yourself for those people that are new. I don't recognize some of the people. It's nice to know where you're at, what you're doing, and your experience with autos.
Yeah, who the hell are you?
I'd like to just kind of give a big thanks to JB. You're my first CFI watching the helicopter training videos.
Yeah.
So, and my downwind checks are, lights out, top of the green, 3 in the green, feeling the car peak. So that's that. You're my introduction. But I've had 24 CFIs.
All right.
Private. And
do you do your downwind checks with a British accent as well? When you say that?
I haven't practiced that. maybe that would be helpful. That'd probably be helpful. I'm not a CFI. I'm private. Got about a little over 200 hours now in R22, and about 829 practice autos at last count.
Wow.
So one of the things I kind of logged in late, but is when we talk about that build, when we lower the collective, and then the build, having 24 CFIs, it varies depending on the weight and the loading of the aircraft. So my current CFI is like 130 pounds and I'm about 150, and it's not an automatic build. I mean, it's like in some helicopters, lower the collective and you can't do the automatic, check, because if you do the automatic check, you're going to lower your RPM. So, it's like, okay, lower the collective, and then, okay, watch for the build or listen for the build or whatever. But it's not automatic, like as in with some other heavier CFIs. It's like, oh yeah, you lower the collective, it's going to build right away and you got to catch it. One of the things that's helped me over, my training is, I think probably should have been emphasized, or maybe I should have learned it earlier, which is, flying attitude, attitude reference.
Yeah.
And you guys are all talking about looking outside. And so now, I found out my autos improved quite a bit, at least the auto entry include quite a bit by, okay, our rotation 3, 2, 1, and look outside at the horizon. And the other thing was, the the back cyclic is really just to maintain the attitude. You know, so if I'm flying around at 65 knots, then and the back cyclic is simultaneous. The other thing that some people didn't emphasize was, it's a simultaneously lower collective, right pedal, and back cyclic. That's all simultaneous. It's not like lower the collective and your right pedal and then, then pull the cyclic back. It's simultaneous. And to maintain your 65 knot attitude, or whatever attitude you want to try to be. And then once I kind of learned that, it's like, it got a lot better as far as, because before I was dropping the nose and then the airspeed's all over the place and RPM's all over the place, and anyway, I wanted to shout out JB. You're my heroes.
Nice.
Oh, thank you, man. You make some good points though. This automatic catch thing, I do it all the time. I go fly with a lighter instructor and I make no adjustment on the first auto entry, and all the way down, roll off and catch, and I give myself, the horn comes on. The good news is it's an easy fix. The downside, if I didn't do enough, of course, is an overspeed. We see it racing through the green, and now it becomes an urgent thing. I think most people know roughly how much to pull, but DA and weight definitely, as we get thinner air, the RPMs will come up more as we fly with a heavier load, whether it's student instructor mix or more fuel, or even a different aircraft. They're all rigged a little bit different too. But my preference is always to go a little bit more on the, I'd rather pull more and have to adjust it down than not pull enough and then see the RPMs racing through the green, and now it becomes an urgent fix, because when it becomes an urgent fix, if it's racing to 110, it's a cyclic jab or whatever technique you guys use. But that doesn't go very well with the student when the instructor jabs their cyclic forward. And so I'd rather go a little bit too much. The horn comes on. Okay, well, I know what that means when the horn comes on. We just need to lower a little bit. It's an easier fix because it gives us that audio warning of, hey, you're slightly low. Just ease it down a little bit. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that simultaneous thing, we used to say, when I came back to the school, helping run the school about 5 years ago, they had this saying. It was down, right, aft, wrist, tack, catch. And the trouble with that is, it's a mouthful, and it just became a chant, and it didn't really mean anything. And the other problem was, you're not saying the things at the time that you do them. You're not going down, right pedal, aft. As you said, it has to be simultaneous. So I got rid of, it was one of the things I wanted to change, is just get rid of that. Make them look out to the horizon. They know that when they lower the collective, they got to put right pedal in, and they should go aft. And if they don't, that's what they're looking outside for. What's different about an auto than descending is what's going on with the left hand, and that's where our verbiage went, was all the way down, roll off, and catch. And it's done at the speed that the words come out, all the way down, roll off, and catch. And everything else should be eyes outside, fix whatever the aircraft's doing. This is the new bit, and I think that's really helped with students fix their eyes on the horizon. And back to what John was saying right at the very start, was doing that drill where you just lower the collective a little bit. We're not rolling off. We're just working on this drill of remembering how we have to a little bit aft, a little bit right, before we progress into autos and low RPM and all these other scary things that happen in an auto.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in, Rotary Ring. Pat, what's up, man? See that you jumped on. New member? Oh, you're muted still, brother. Yeah, almost still muted. I wonder if I can unmute you. No. You called it a cyclic jab, and that does make sense. If the RPM is climbing quickly, you just kind of jab that cyclic forward to help slow it down.
Yeah, it's and we do again back and harp on this a lot, but we do a lot of training before, so the instructors are are pretty confident on using this tool. It's a last resort type of tool.
Yeah.
We do it in the sim and we do it in the aircraft as well. We do a bunch of different scenarios with not enough collective, too much half cyclic, a big build and a 180, and they're all kind of slightly different builds. But the solution to unload the rotors, and to be very clear, only in an auto, with the engine and rotor tax split.
Yeah.
You know, if the engine's coming up and the rotor and engine come up together, you do this, it becomes a low G situation.
Right.
So we have to be really, really careful to remind everyone,
Right.
this is just autos. Yeah. And it's like a jab punch. If you imagine how quickly you would put your fist out and back, you don't hold it in and then come back. You know, it has to be in and out, and all it does is just unload the rotor for a second and make this. It just pauses the build. And sometimes in real high DA, I've had to do a couple in a row. And at the same time, you're saying my controls, because for a student, it's a traumatic experience, really. You don't jab the cyclic out of their hands effectively.
Right.
You've already been pulling a ton of collective, but it's too late, or the student's been pulling a ton of collective, but it's too late. It's screaming up, and you're about to redline it, jab, and it just stops it. But it only stops it momentarily. So if you don't fix whatever the problem was, then you're right back into it a second later. But what usually happens is, they do the jab, and because they've been pulling a ton of collective, it stops it and then comes down real fast, and you go from high RPM overspeed to low RPM, shaking. So again, the instructor should take the controls on those scenarios and get on it. But
you're likely going to roll on in that scenario, right? Like after you've kind of kept it from.
No, it depends. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. This is a really absolute classic trap for an instructor. This circles back to everything you've been saying about entry, right? So this is one of the first ones we do on the 180 auto intervention training with an instructor. I lower the collective as a student, and I never come off cyclic. I just lower the collective and I roll off and catch, and the aircraft just starts nosing over. But the RPMs start tanking. The horn goes off. And it's not because I caught too much. I caught normal, like a small amount of catch. But because we don't present the rotor disc, the RPMs go down. It drags everyone's attention to the RPMs. And the first reaction, of course, is to lower the collective, which makes it worse. It brings the nose down even further. And then at that point, we realize, oh, wow, we've just, we're now 85 knots. And if it's a 180, which is a good one to do with a 180 because we've already started the turn. So we've got this 85 knots or more and more building, nose low, collective too low. And now you see the airspeed. If you come off cyclic at 85, 90 knots in R22 and high DA, it'll overspeed it almost instantly. Because we're fixated on the. So to answer your question, I would never roll on then, because the rotor will go up to 110 before we hit limits. The engine only 10, depends on the aircraft, 105, 106. So we would leave the engine out of it, and and also this is probably coming towards a runway, and there's maybe, we've got to make sure we turn. So I would take the controls, and then we would fight this thing round and use the collective to control the RPM. And once we've got everything stable, then we bring the engine back. That's what I say to people, it's like, there's tons of energy available usually in those type of scenarios. Don't bring the engine in and make your possible rotor overspeed an engine and rotor overspeed. Now it's a even bigger problem, and it's going to be down for even longer.
Yeah.
But it depends. I mean, we do low flares, and low flares that fall through, that's usually put the engine back in, because that's your best chance. Get the engine in, level the aircraft. But it depends.
Yeah, good stuff. What's up, Pat?
You guys got me?
Gotcha.
All right, cool. Hey, I'm good to have found you guys. I fixed wing guy. Also fly helicopters commercial. I've got a little tour company here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Fly tours, balloon festival type stuff. Got about 750 hours helicopter time. So I'm learning. Like to get my CFI, and so this is just a good way to be a sponge and try to get my feet wet and try to gather some good information from some guys that know what they're doing, and try to get my mind wrapped around what I'm coming up against here coming up soon. So trying to get a jump start, I guess, if you will. So
that's great, man. Well, I challenge you to pick a task from the ACS from a lesson plan that you predict you're going to have to. There's a few required ones that your CFI that your examiner is going to ask you, like runway incursion, a few other things that you're going to have to present on. This stuff that I've been practicing. So yeah, pick some tasks from the ACS and use this as a platform to present in a friendly environment. And you see, it's pretty low key, pretty chill, and that's the idea. Give you that opportunity to talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, just listening to what you guys were saying earlier about instructors, and I'm like I said, I've got tons to learn, believe me. But I've ran into the issue with instructors a lot. Guys that I've flown with that they just can't keep their hands off the controls. So they have me. I'm worried because they're like, "Are you that scared of me?" I mean, I'm flying night. We do Christmas light tours.
Yeah.
You know, all the month of December. I fly. I got 500 hours a night. I mean, I'm not that terrible of a. I mean, I haven't crashed yet, but I mean, these guys are just got their hands they're just shadowing everything. It's like, dude, you're worrying me here. Was something going to happen?
Yeah.
But or auto, they just they won't let you fly. I said, it's my helicopter. Let me. If I overspeed it, it's on me. I own it. So let me. I mean, I don't think if I do, I will. But I mean, let me fly this thing. So if you keep messing with it, I can't get better. You know what I'm saying? If you keep adjusting stuff, I mean, I think it boils down to most they're just not like you said, it's experience. And I get it.
Yeah.
I had no experience, but I mean, they don't know. I've flown with some guys, good guys. I don't know if you ever Paul Salmon. He's a YouTube guy. I flew with him several times, and he was one of those guys that he'd let you go. I mean, he knew, where you were going to get hung up, and he'd let you, say, I would. And I appreciated that. So, but he just knew what he was doing. So, I have run into that with instructors. It seems like it's hard to get, seasoned guys, especially in my area. There aren't anybody doing instruction anymore here in the Oklahoma area. So, yeah, I found that a lot. But no, I just appreciate getting to kind of listen to you guys and try to gather some tips and get a head start and kind of refresh myself on some of this stuff too, because I haven't been in the training regime in a little while, so I'm due for a flight review anyway. So that plus with the CFI stuff coming up, this is all gonna help me get better. I hope so.
That's awesome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's great to hear your story. It's cool to hear everybody's story and how different everybody's experience is in this world.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff. Sounds like you do some really fun stuff too. You have your own.
Oh yeah,
You're flying a 44.
Yeah, got a 44.
Nice. That's great.
Do lots of balloon festivals and
yeah,
just little events, carnival type stuff, and then just basic tours here in town. Different rides for people, gender reveals, stuff like that. And Christmas light tours, that's our big one. We do we fly awesome. 50 or 60 hours the month of December, doing Christmas tours. So
those are cool.
That does pretty good for us. So.
I love night flying, man. That's great. I try to get as much as I can. So that's cool you're doing that. That sounds like a great gig.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So.
When did you fly with Paul?
Oh man, it's been time flies. I don't know. It's been 3 years maybe. I literally was with him, and we went down and flew. I flew my machine over to Cape and flew with him, and we were talking about doing my CFI. Then he's like, "Hey, come over on Wednesday and stay here, and Saturday you'll take your check." I'm like, "What? Are you serious? We'll get you." I'm like, "Okay." Well, it wasn't 8 months. I heard that he passed. I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?" I mean, I was like, "That's crazy." But yes, I would have already had it because I was sold. I was going to go. I mean, I liked him. He's just a normal, straight up guy. No frills. Just a solid dude. I mean, he was easy to talk to. Yeah. So that was pretty rough.
He kind of got me into gyros in a roundabout way because he kept saying that thing about if you start in the gyro plane and then move into the helicopter. I never got to meet him in person. I wish I would have. But now every year I try to go to that Benson Days that he used to. It's in Florida. So I've been 2 years in a row. But yeah, he was obviously from watching his stuff, sounded like an amazing guy. So
yeah, he was a pretty good dude. Like I say, I got over there, flew over there, and I can't remember, my phone was dying or something. I had needed a battery to get my GPU, my iPad, something. And it's like 6 hours over there in my helicopter from Tulsa to Cape. And he dug around a box somewhere and said, here's your battery. Just give me about, like an iPad, it's like a 2,000, whatever milliamp battery. I mean, it was probably $40, $50. I said, Paul, please, no, don't worry about it. No big deal. Just here, take it. I don't care. I got 10 of them in there. I mean, he was just a good guy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just
Yeah.
I don't know. It was crazy. I never thought, but things happen. You just never know.
Well, yeah. Hey, Pat, what do you do? When you're the owner operator of a helicopter and you're doing tours, do you have your own idea about I will do autos every month, or like how do you keep yourself proficient when you don't have
Well,
doing it as instruction?
that's the problem. I haven't done autos in probably 6-7 months, and I need to get into more of a strict regimen of training. And the problem with here in Tulsa, we don't have anybody that does. No flight schools. The folks that I took over for that left did offer flight instruction, and they didn't have any students here, so they left. So that's what I'd like to get my CFI. I could possibly do some training here myself, but I need to be more stringent with my training as well. I'm not uncomfortable doing an auto right now, I don't believe, but I mean, I'm sure I need to be tuned pretty heavily, for sure. It's been several months, so.
Come out to Bend. I know it's a long flight. Come out to Bend.
Yeah,
Come see me.
Stop in Denver on your way.
I'm actually considering doing getting my instrument add-on. I don't know if you guys have any good recommendations for that. I'm probably talking to some guys that probably sell that kind of stuff, huh?
Are you looking for somewhere in the Midwest?
Yeah, or I mean, I'm just like I say, now who are you with, John?
I'm not with anybody. I'm working on my CFI also.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've been going a lot of places. I've been flying in a lot of different locations, and the guys I flew with in California at Rogue Aviation were outstanding. I've flown with some guys in Florida, Leading Edge over in North Carolina, or not Leading Edge. Leading Edge is Jay's school in Bend, Oregon, which I intend on going to shortly. But yeah, I've had to travel around to get the experience. There's some good flying here in Colorado. Some of my favorite instructors are no longer here. I followed one out to North Carolina and flew with him there because he's just such a powerhouse instructor, and we've done a lot together. But that's what I'm searching for too, man. I'm always looking for good instruction, getting the most out of my money spent. I know there's a lot of good schools out there, and I've tried a lot of them, and some of them aren't as great as others, but yeah, I'd like to work here in Colorado as a CFI part-time, working towards full-time eventually, or who knows. I'm open to it. There's just kind of chugging along here.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep. It's good stuff.
If you come out to Florida, I can recommend USATS, United States Aviation Training Schoolhouse there, out in Titusville, over by Cape Kennedy.
Okay, they're pretty good, huh?
That used to be the old Bristow, and at one point they were Helicopter Adventures.
Yep.
They mainly specialize on the 300, but they have a few 44s, I think, still. So
They do.
I went there, and pretty good school. Like I said, Jay's got an excellent. I'm trying to go see Jay. I'm trying to beat you over there, John.
Yeah.
No, I'm open about anything.
I'm closer. And then, if worst comes to worst, I can come out to you. I'm independent CFI, so I'm training Robinsons, Cabries. However you want to do it, kind of, just what you're comfortable with.
Tulsa's a beautiful town.
Oh yeah, I like it here. So just kind of short on the training folks. Not too many around. So. Yeah, very good, guys. I appreciate everything. Good info.
Join us on the next one, Pat. And like I said, if you feel like you want to present something, it's a good platform to do it. No pressure, of course, but we'd love to have you present if you're up for it.
Okay.
When you get to that lesson plan stage,
Sure.
Yeah,
Sounds good. Sounds good, guys.
for sure. Anybody else in the group have anything? There's only a couple other guys I haven't talked, so I mean it's really good turnout here today.
Hey, John. So, what would be your recommendation for to go get more experience on autos here closer in Colorado?
Mm. So you at the school you're at now, or how are you willing to travel?
I mean, I would be willing to travel, but
Yeah.
depending on how far,
Yeah, and I don't know, frankly, who's better than who you have. Have you flown with Johannes yet?
No, I
Oh.
haven't.
I would fly with him.
You know him?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I would fly with Johannes, and I would.
I second that too.
Yeah, Teo's flown.
Yeah,
with him.
he's good. He's good.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And
I've been flying with Lily only.
Yeah, you should mix it up. You don't have to stay with that single instructor. I would encourage you to try flying with Johannes. Tell him what you want to accomplish, and we've talked about some of the goals that you have. Kind of reflect some of this auto rotation training ideas. He's very receptive, and he's on the same page, man. So I think he would be. I think he's a good instructor, and he's comfortable with auto rotations. And he'll take you up, and I think you guys will rip around and do a good, learn a lot.
Oh, yeah.
He'll get you up to altitude.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And just kind of tell them, and I think that's another thing that students have a tendency to not necessarily guide their own training in Part 61, right? And I think it requires a little bit of that. If you're just at the mercy of the flight instructor who just flew 3 lessons right before you, they don't necessarily remember where you're at. They're not necessarily invested in your progress as much as you are invested in your progress. I think it's important as a student to recognize where you need help kind of guide the instructor towards the training that you think you need. You're at this point now where you've done basically everything. Where are your weak points? Where are the places you want to focus on? And then come up with some creative solutions to get there. Spitball some ideas like, hey, can we try this? What do you think of doing this? Have you ever thought of X, Y, and Z? And I think in our scenario at the 61 level, and you're not in a structured regimental school, we have to take ownership of that. And I'm happy to help, talk with you more about it, brother. But I do think that you get up to Johannes and say, hey, man, here's where I'm struggling. Here's what I want to work on. Can you help me? And he's going to say, absolutely, let's do X, Y, and Z to get there.
Okay. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to, and I think that's the other thing. I think people feel like this, dependency, or not dependency, but they don't want to necessarily move instructors for fear of, because I certainly have felt that too. I don't want to hurt their feelings or blah, blah, but it's your money. It's your time, and you've got to do what's best for you. And I think it is important to fly with a bunch of different guys.
Yeah, I got to concur, John. I did about a similar thing. I went to Bristow. I went to Tampa Bay Aviation. Pretty much everybody that was in Orlando I went to. Mm-hmm. As soon as I could take the safety course, Robinson safety course, I did that. I flew with John East. So yeah, definitely mix up your training. Fly in the mountain environments. If you're a Florida guy, fly in the mountain environments. If you're a mountain guy, fly in the Florida. But mix it up, because once you're able to fly commercially or a CFI, you might get a job. Like right now, I'm up in Washington and I'm from Florida. So it happens.
Diego, I travel.
What do you think, nosebleeds?
Yeah.
What are you flying up in Washington, Jay?
I'm flying the S-55. I'm doing some cherry drying right now.
So what's that like? I know it's kind of off topic. I don't want to stray us here. I don't know, but that's something I've followed that for 2 or 3, 4 years now on Facebook. I'm thinking that would be something that would be so cool. I think I don't know. I just
it's great. So my buddy told me. He said it's going to be like helicopter camp. You're going to be around a bunch of pilots, and luckily we all click. So we had one guy that was kind of the oddball, and it kind of worked itself out. He got let go. So we all kind of click. We work together as a team, and it's really neat to fly. You know, S-55 it's been around for years. You know, flew in the 50. So it's just a wealth of experience that you're going to get. So be it the flying, sometimes, you know, the owner's A&P, so sometimes, you know, he doesn't mind if you kind of watch him do some stuff, and then you get to put your hands on stuff that you're probably not going to be able to put your hands on ever again. You know, I don't know. This is probably the only person that has that S-55. He's got like 6 or 7 right now that fly. Some of them are turbine.
I'm an A&PIA, so I don't want to say that. I want to tell him that. I might be doing wrenches on him instead.
Yeah, go work on some radials.
You might be somebody that he might want to.
It's not with ADF. It's not with ADF then, right? It's the other group up there.
No, it's not. It's the other people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems
no,
cool.
very.
So do you get any videos of your flying? Are you able to get any videos of what you do?
I'll tell you once I leave here.
Nice. Okay.
Roger.
They have a policy, I see.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with flight instruction lately, and I'm a CFI, MEI, double I, all that business, fixed wing, and I got it back in like 2001. I mean, but I don't know if it's changed or what, but I've flown with several folks and just kind of getting tuned up, recurrent stuff, and it's like, let's go fly. Like Pilatos, you get out and you get in the helicopter, take off, and then they're talking you through. I took probably 3 or 4 years off. I hadn't flown in my span of years of getting busy off sidetracked and other things. And when I taught, it was always, you had an hour of sitting down and you went through the entire flight, what we're doing, explained it, and talked through it and rehearsed it. So there wasn't any question, you know what I'm saying? You weren't trying to fly the machine and then listen to what they're trying to tell you and grasp what they're saying. I don't think you guys, are you all just trying to build out? I mean, I get it, but I mean, I was saying, is that prevalent or is that was I just having bad luck? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it seemed like everybody's wanted to fly. They didn't want to do any ground stuff. It wasn't really much of a briefing. It was like, yeah, good job. Where's your logbook? Can we sign that? Out of here, you know, like what?
That's been a lot of my experience too, and I think a lot of that is flight instructors who are too busy. They're overbooked potentially. As a student, a lot of students don't necessarily want to pay for that additional time because the cost is already so damn high, right? We're trying to keep our costs down, so it's just like, and so yeah, I mean, I've had both, right? But it's been often like, all right, you ready? Let's go. Jump in the helicopter, and there's no pre-flight ground or a quick debrief, you know. And I don't find that very effective, but I notice both.
Okay, I wasn't alone then. I wasn't sure if I just a bad part of town or bad part of the country where I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, another one of those things I found though through my travels in life. But good stuff.
I've got a question. I got a question for the group. Pete Gillies going to have a presentation tomorrow, but I mean, I was wondering what your thoughts are, because when I watch like Pete Gillies' like presentation on like the YouTube, I mean, it sounds like he's talking about cyclic back before all else. I mean, before even lowering the collective. I mean, I don't know if he's just talking about, okay, if you're at, you know, cruise flight and okay, so if I'm at 80, 90 knots or something like that, okay, yeah, you know, maybe that makes a lot of sense because you're going to, you know, bleed off a lot of speed and all while you're doing it. But I mean, maybe you guys can comment on that philosophy.
I kind of I'm gonna co-host with Pete tomorrow. I have his deck. I laid out his deck and I kind of put together his discussion of the plan. I based it all off the conversations that he had on some YouTube channels, on some podcasts, and what I gathered from what Pete is saying is that in an actual engine failure, the reaction time is different than what you would experience if you're initiating an engine failure or simulating an engine failure. That it happens fast, and what they had been trained to do in the past. I'll share my screen here. And that's why I think it's slightly outdated. But what they had been trained to do in the past is, if you can see my screen here. So you notice on this presentation, it's bottom, lower collective, throttle to split the needles. This is to initiate an auto rotation. But the next thing that there was taught historically was maintain auto rotation airspeed. So what was happening a lot of times in these accidents that he was investigating was there would be an engine failure, and what the operator would do, or what the pilot would do, was immediately lower collective and then push for airspeed. And when that happens, the nose goes over and they immediately get into a low RPM scenario. When that happens, you get retreating blade stall at low RPM. It's V&E the other direction. And then the helicopter would yaw to the left, and they'd be able to kind of control it just to the point where they'd kind of impact on that left skid and crash. So that has been sort of the mentality of flying in an auto rotation. You have to push for airspeed, and he was really, from my impression, the guy who really kind of changed the perspective and the mentality of, we can do autos at any airspeed. What we need to do is pull that cyclic back and load the rotor disc to maintain the RPM.
Yeah, I got to load up that rotor. And I think Jay had a really good scenario with that A-Star. Maybe you can speak to that, Jay. A few weeks ago, you spoke of that.
Yeah, it was an accident that happened, and again, I can't remember the exact year, probably about 15 years ago, with an A-Star that, this was just about the time where they started putting in the equivalent of a black box. Airbus, was putting in data recorders and stuff of control inputs. So it was great because it allowed them to recreate this accident. And this crew, I think it was an air medical crew, I feel like they were under MVGs, and this was a contributing factor, because when the engine quit and they lowered the collective, what they didn't perceive was this attitude change. It was about what I was saying earlier on. When the nose goes over, the RPMs just keep going down. And so they were not thinking about aft cyclic. All they thought about was get the collective all the way down, but it wasn't enough. And so this collective goes all the way down, and they're still getting low RPM horns, so they're lowering further, and this thing just plows it into the ground. They never managed to recover RPM or effective RPM. And that was one of the accidents that spurred this whole, which I'm sure Pete will talk about tomorrow, was this, we got to use that aft cyclic, we got to reload that rotor. And when Airbus ran the simulation and they put all the data in, they understood what was going on. But yeah, when we do simulated engine failure training with the instructors, and we roll down, we say that when you say engine failure with the student, and the student, if they don't react by the time the horn comes on, it's about 97%. If they don't react by then, the instructor must take the controls. That's your cue, and you enter the auto. But even then, it comes down pretty low. And so I've tried to explain to the instructors, if it's critically low, you have to use that aft cyclic. It's not just level at that point. It's you can regain the RPMs to get to a safe regime, and then fly it at say 55 or whatever it is, and then slowly get RPMs back. But it's I can only imagine as a crew under MVGs, I can imagine how easy it would be to lose all peripheral as they dumped the collective. The horn went on, they dumped the collective. Why is the RPM not coming back? Why is the RPM not coming back? We're losing control, and it's all over.
I'm going to share my screen again. I want to show you a specific quote.
Here's someone else say someone else. That's too depressing to end on that. Someone talk about something else.
I'm going to share my screen again. I have one more thing to say, that from a direct quote from Pete on this subject. He said, lowering collective never stops RPM from dropping. It just slows down how rapidly they drop until or unless aft cyclic is applied to stop it. Pilots must apply aft cyclic to get air flowing through the rotor blades from underneath. And that's a direct quote from Pete on his podcast. And that reflects exactly what Jay was saying. And that string of accidents that Pete investigated in the 80s was kind of right on pace with that.
And if you're an instructor and you keep an eye on this, you can see this. You can show this to a student as long as you're careful and you have your own minimums. Lower the collective and leave the cyclic where it is. And once you get to 95% or whatever your threshold is, fix it. But you'll see, it doesn't matter how low the collective is, you're going to keep losing RPM.
Load the
Thanks.
disc.
That makes a lot of sense. What you guys are saying.
Load the disc. Load the disc and keep it in the green. There's 2 books on it. I mean, it's not as simple as it sounds, but it kind of is that simple in a way, right? And then do autos backwards. I don't know if you guys saw that video that I put on the group chat or in Max Performance. There's this helicopter from out in the distance, and you see it, and you're like, oh, it's a nice looking auto. But it's coming in like this the whole way for probably over maybe 1,000 feet AGL, just backwards auto all the way in. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right on the H. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment that it's more related to a little bit of the past. I just finished my work shift. That's why I'm also hopping in now. I was listening though. Thank you for the presentation. But it's kind of about the when to start teaching these auto-rotations. Because I feel like, the first time you do your auto, it goes in 1 second. It's 1 second and it's done. After you've been doing it for a year, then you're in the glide and you're breathing in and out. Like that's unheard of in your first auto-rotation. Right? You held your breath throughout the whole thing. So when do you start teaching that auto-rotation? What considerations do you get into? Because then the also thing that came up to me was, that question that someone asked here of, why aren't we getting introduced one control at a time, right? And I do feel like that might be because we need to know, if we're doing, how much after we're doing, how much of the collective is affecting the amount of after we have to do, right? Maybe that's why we're using both at the same time instead of one at a time. But then how do we know as a newly minted CFI, which I am not yet, how do we know when to start teaching that maneuver? Maybe after we feel that they're competent with the quick stops, right? That's, I don't know, something that I think in the future will be a good question for myself to when do I actually start doing these rotations? How much do I push the student? How much do I actually say? Because if it's going to be gone in 1 second, right? How much of what I'm saying is just overloading the student? Just like questions for myself in the future. I don't know if anyone has any inputs on when do you know your student is ready to go for the auto-rotation? Because you also need to push them up a little bit, right? I've been pushed by my instructor. I've also felt that jab that Jay was talking about. I felt that once, and it is a traumatic experience. It's like, oh, what's happening? It's like, oh, whoa. And also some comments of people saying, I've had an instructor that held a lot more to the cyclic, right, or to the controls. And I remember on my pilot, I had the opposite. On my private pilot, I had an instructor that was super hands-off. It was great. And then I progressed a little bit further, different instructor, great instructor. I learned a lot of different aspects, but he was a lot more in the controls, which made me feel a lot less competent, which made my flights a little bit worse. I don't know. So I just threw 1,000 things. I was just holding on to all of this until I finished work. So back maybe on the thoughts on auto-rotation and how do you know when the student is ready, or how do you, when to push? Sorry if this is getting too long. Just finished work.
I'm going to let one of the Jays answer that one. Those guys, they have the answers.
All right. So in my particular situation, so I'm sure JB is going to follow up after me. I had a commercial student that had more time than I did. So my first check ride was a commercial check ride that I had to do. So we had to do this within 7 days. So at one point I was like, okay, well, I got to shoot this straight in auto just to, set what it is, because he was flying. I think he was flying a Gusta or he might have been flying a Bell, one of those. So he was not used to flying the 20. He had flown that particular ship at one point. So sometimes the situation will dictate. You know, you could have somebody that has way more time than you, but you still got to be able to proficiently show them, hey, I know that you've been flying Bell or A Star or whatever, but this is what you got to remember about the 22 or the 44 or the Cabri, because you're supposed to, as an instructor, you're supposed to set the standards. But with your initials, yeah, you got to take your time. You'll know when they're, you know, they can hover, they can do their approaches, you know, they're getting good aircraft control. Now it's time to advance. You never want to hold back. You want to always keep moving forward. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Anyone else?
You're up.
I do want to say one thing. I was thinking about this and talking about flying with Paul Salmon, some of the stuff he said. I thought it was kind of ironic. He told me one of the times I flew him, he said, I don't even really agree with teaching doing lots of auto rotations. I said, I think it's dangerous. He said, when people tear up so many aircraft get crashed, people are training. He said, I've got 10,000 hours. I don't know if he ever said he had one or if he never had any engine failures in a helicopter. He said, you don't have engine failures every week. He said, why does everybody do 50 auto, why you just keep doing them? You're just asking you're just asking to crash. I don't know. That was his, I was shocked when he said that. I'm like, what? That was his logic though. I mean, he taught him, but I'm just saying, when I flew with him, we didn't do that many. We did, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, let's keep doing these over and over again. You get it. Okay, we're good. He's like, I don't really agree with having to, it's their how many accidents people have training auto rotations versus actual engine failures.
Well, he's right.
Think about that. So I said, you got a point, but I mean, I get both sides of it, I guess, but I never looked at it that way. Just something popped in my head. I remember him telling me that, and I was kind of surprised, but.
He's right. The data shows that. In fact, behind power line strikes, training auto rotations is one of the biggest accidents. Yeah, and they teach that in the Robinson safety course, and so that's we're training for something that very rarely happens, is how they say it. Yeah,
exactly.
But there is something to be said about being freaking good at them, man.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I know Jay. Mentioned playing with John East. I've talked with him several times, and I was going to get with him. I just haven't got there yet. But I always thought that'd be. I don't know. I just see him. He's a YouTube guy. I mean, he seems like a good guy, though. I mean, I'm just saying. Some people bash him, and I think he's kind of, but I think
he is a heck of a guy. If you ever give the opportunity, give him a call. The hospitality that he'll show you, because at least this was my experience. He lives in a ranch,
Sure.
So you're pretty to train there. You're gonna stay pretty much with him.
Yeah.
But the hospitality that he showed me, it was just amazing. We flew every single day. He was just wonderful. I got nothing but great things to say about John.
I mean, I'm not one to be a stunt pilot or do tricks. I think it'd be a confidence builder. You know what I'm saying? This is what you can do. And I took the Robinson safety course.
Yeah.
Went over to Compton and do all those guys, and we had all the, basically stop, come straight down, back on stuff that I'd never done, other than straight ins and 180s. It wasn't like what John does. It was, pretty quick show of some stuff, zero airspeed type stuff. It was like, man, this thing will do that. Yeah, it'll do that. I mean, you just never been there before. It gives you the extra confidence to think, hey, I can put this in that parking lot. You know what I'm saying? Worst case, I might knock the skids out from under it, but I mean, I think I can get as everybody walking out of it, hopefully. Yeah. Maybe make yourself feel like you can, even if you don't, but you'll feel good go all the way down, But so, I'd like to get a chance to do that sometime, hopefully.
I guess that's our form of acrobatic flying, too, in a way. We're not flipping Red Bull helicopters upside down, but that's our way to get a little sporty in a way,
Sure, you bet.
Jay, you want to finish up with Tio's comment there?
Yeah, real quick. I'll talk about when is a student ready. I think goes back to what Jay was saying. It doesn't matter whether they're a brand new student or they come from, in fact, some of the worst people I've flown with have come from big aircraft, and they come into an R-22, and it's you give them as much rope because they've got that experience, and they're going to kill us because they're not used to that R-22 twitchiness. First time I got back in an R-22 after not flying one for 10 years, and I said, this is a terrible aircraft to learn in. It is so twitchy and so awful. So I think it's about aircraft touch. It's about aircraft control. I'm not going to let you do an auto with me if you can't work out how much to put the cyclic in, for example. It's not about hours. It's just about, do you have the aircraft control? When I say general aft, will you give me general aft? I do think, circling back to what I said earlier, is that doesn't mean that you can't introduce a lot of, hey, I'm doing an auto, follow along, focus on one thing. Maybe it's the air sound or the attitude, or it's my collective position, and I'm telling you when I'm building and why I'm not, why I am and not moving. And that kind of goes back into the other thing you talked about was the control isolation. I think it was Rodewing that asked about control isolation in an auto, or someone did. I think goes back to what Jay was saying again, that it's a brand new 200-hour instructor. The idea of now separating those flight controls in a maneuver that I'm not 100% comfortable with is terrifying. And if they haven't been doing it, if they haven't been trained to do it, it's probably not going to happen. But it is possible. It is not a terrible idea. We used to do no throttle manipulation with a student. So initially, you're gonna lower all the way down. I'll roll the throttle off. All you have to do is follow my instructions on catch, and then we're back to flying the aircraft. Things like that. But you could do cyclic only for the instructor, for the student, if you're just trying to worry about attitude. But I think generally control isolation is not a common thing in auto entries or autos generally. I think maybe for a flight or two, but I think the instructor's just not used to doing it, and they're a second away from doing every control input anyway. Why make it more complicated and have even more hands-on and then end up with an overspeed because they forgot which piece they were supposed to be doing? I understand why that doesn't happen. Yeah, it's I don't think it doesn't answer your question. When should we introduce it? The no set number, good control touch, and the instructor will work out when that is, hopefully.
Yeah, that answered it pretty well. Yeah. All of you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish I had learned. I mean, I don't know how other people's experience was, but I was introduced to anything auto related or even EP stuff for about 35 hours, and it's the school that I started with. They were just very timid. They were scared to do anything beyond pattern work. And they had one helicopter. There was new school. They were just very timid, and I didn't know any better at the time. And so really part of what I want to emphasize to new students going forward is don't let yourself get into that, boxed into that rut. Talk with your instructors, try to get yourself to progress, and you start getting some of those EPs in early, because it took me a while to catch up because I felt like I was so behind. Frankly, it made me feel like I was a bad pilot for a while. And then I went and flew with a different pilot, and he's like, dude, you're great. You got a great stick. He's like, let's do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, oh man, that's encouraging. This is exciting. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for experience, flying around, get new instructors, finding some good ones for you, getting some people with more hours, some people that have more experience too. So it's good stuff. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I think it kind of depends on your philosophy. It kind of ties along with your philosophy of when will you have your student solo, right? Because you can, right, because that's a philosophical question too. So I was signed off to solo at 20 hours. So of course, if I'm going to do that, you have to be introduced to the auto and all the EPs before that, right? But usually they go around the room like at the HI, and they say, okay, how many people soloed at 20 hours? How many people would have been confident in an auto rotation on your and on your solo? And virtually everybody raises their hand like, no, I don't think I would have made. And I would say the same thing. If I had an engine failure on my solo, I don't think I would have made it. So
No.
so that kind of goes along with, okay, so then when do you feel you should solo your students? Should you solo them at at the minimums, or should you solo them right before they're ready for a check ride, right? So it kind of goes along the same thing. Like how much experience do you want them to have before I mean, auto rotation is an EP, so when do you feel that they're confident or competent to to handle an EP?
That's such a big moment too in a student's experience in the whole process. Is that first solo flight? You're kind of working towards it, and it's weighing on you, and it's on your mind, and getting it to the point where you can do it and you get it done and you do it safely. It's such. I remember it being such a relief and exuberant, and yeah, certainly not confident with all the EPs at the time, but I could fly a pattern. I could fly a pattern damn well, And it's like, I'm just gonna do what I do, and I'm gonna do that 2 or 3 times, and I'm gonna put that bitch down, and then I'm back to whatever's next, But yeah, had there been an engine failure, what a huge step in the progress of becoming a pilot. Such a
I think I'm going to share this
milestone.
one, the last one I did. Let me see if I can do this. Start streaming. Screen.
Oh, I should mention that, okay, even though I got signed off at 20, I didn't take my check ride to 120 hours, so.
Did that?
Yeah.
So was it necessary to solo at 20? Maybe not.
Are you seeing my screen there, John?
Yeah, I got your screen. We have your screen. There's some photos.
Yes.
You have some photos up?
Yeah, I did that one. That was Hans. He soloed in his cavalry back in April. And that was the last solo I did as an instructor. It's an amazing feeling. I've only done a few. A lot of my students are advanced, so I haven't had to worry about soloing. So I think I've done about 3 solos so far. But you'll get a sense of, okay, yeah, they're ready to go. And if there's ever any question, don't solo somebody that's not ready. Please don't.
Let me share a quick story. An old DPE from across the hills told me about one of the first solos he did 40 years ago as an instructor. This girl, he wasn't sure she could fly the pattern, so he signed her off for hover only. So he gets out the helicopter, so she's kind of behind the curve. She's maybe 40, 50 hours, and she hasn't soloed. So he signs her off for solo only, hover only. He gets out, and back then he didn't have a handheld radio. And he gives her the thumbs up, and this is the first time she's ever flown without anyone else on board. So she comes up to light on the skids. She's already blasting off, and he said he watched her go up about 100 feet straight up. There's nothing he could do. He just watched her go up.
Oh my God.
And now she's trying to do vertical reference down for the first time. So he thought he was going to lose his, this is all going to be a terrible disaster. He says, so just be careful to remind students. One of the things is that it will take a lot less power to go as fast or to climb or to pick up.
Yeah, I've heard, maybe somebody could validate this too, but I've heard that a lot of accidents for students who solo that don't use ballast because they're not familiar with the weight differences, right? So I think it was a 50-pound ballast, which helped, but I even still felt the difference, right? And I don't know. Do you guys use ballast, Jays? No.
Just warn everybody that the R-44 hangs a little different when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Skids low, skids
Mm-hmm. Nose up.
I was super scared of that solo because of that, how different the nose attitude is. And I was growing a garden. I am growing a garden. Had this massive squash, this like massive zucchini. I'm like, I'm taking that with me. So I put everything I could on that seat. I had like 50 pounds or more of like ballast there because I was scared. So, yeah, just traveling zucchini with me, you know.
So the zucchini was your co-pilot on your solo? Is that a legal
yeah,
solo?
absolutely.
I mean, did it have googly eyes on or?
Oh, that would have been great.
It's technically a living thing, so I don't know. Yeah. Did you put it in the seat or under the seat? Because there's a weight limit. You know, there's a restriction.
It was under the seat. Under the seat. Yeah, yeah. Would have been weird to explain, you know.
Yeah, you got this zucchini strapped in with you.
Not if you had googly eyes stuck on the front. That would have solved the problem.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like we could talk about this all day. Anything else that anybody wants to add? Or should we go enjoy our Friday evening? Well, I'm grateful for y'all being here. Great study group. Again, this has been recorded. It'll be in past presentations. Hope you guys see you guys next week. It'll be open discussion next week. We don't have anything formally planned. I challenge anybody who's up to presenting a task and showing us their lesson plan, presenting their lesson plan, to please do. Thanks again. See you guys all in the next one.
See you tomorrow.
Oh, and tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Pete Gillies.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Awesome. Bye.